I will now call to order the December 13, 2023 Clackamas County Board of Commissioners Land Use Meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under
indivisible,
indivisible,
and
with
justice for
liberty,
all.
justice for all.
Good morning, everyone. We are holding this meeting in person and virtually. The Zoom link and instructions to participate via Zoom are located at clackamas.us/meetings/bcc/land use. Today, we will consider an application by Peter F. Fry for H&R Properties and Susan Owens, identified as file Z0313-23-CP and Z0314-23-ZAP. A proposed comprehensive plan map amendment from medium density residential to light industrial. And a corresponding zone change from medium-density residential MR1 to light industrial. No development is proposed with this application. Public testimony will be taken this morning. As always, the public is welcome to sign up to testify. Those wishing to testify this morning will be called on to provide your testimony at the appropriate time. When you are called on, please be sure to indicate your name and the area where you live. I would like to remind all participants, including staff, all elected officials, and members of the public, that Robert's Rules of Order will be enforced during this meeting. We welcome your opinions and look forward to your polite participation. This hearing will be conducted as follows. Number one, we will first hear a presentation from Martha Fritzie, Principal Planner. Then I will open the hearing for public testimony, beginning with the applicant, who may be present if they wish. Next, a representative from the Planning Commission will have 3 minutes. Next, any public officials who wish to testify will have 3 minutes. Next, representatives from recognized community planning organizations and agencies will have 3 minutes. Finally, others wishing to testify will have 3 minutes. The board will then deliberate and either render a decision today or set a time to make a decision at a later date. Assisting us in the hearing today is our clerk, Tony Maynard, Principal Planner Martha Fritzie, and Assistant County Counsel Caleb Hubel. I would also like to state Commissioners West and Savas are unable to attend this today, and Commissioner Schrader is online via Zoom. Thank you. And Commissioner Scholl and I are at the dais. We do have a quorum for this meeting. Tony, I forgot to have you do the roll call, but I just kind of winged it and put it in here right now. Now, we'll begin the hearing on Z0313-23-CP and Z0314-23-ZAP with legal statement by Caleb Hugel following the planning staff's presentation of the report and recommendation. Go ahead, Caleb.
This is a quasi-judicial land use hearing, which means several important things for those participating. First, the applicable substantive criteria are listed in the staff report. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward either those criteria or other criteria that the person believes apply to the decision. Second, failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the county and other parties an opportunity to respond precludes appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. In addition, the failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the county to respond precludes an action for damages in circuit court on those issues. Once final, the decision on this application may be appealed to the Land Use Board of Appeals. At this time, I will ask the commissioners to disclose any ex parte contacts, bias, or conflicts of interest. Please indicate the nature and extent of the ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest, and indicate whether you intend to participate in or abstain from the hearing.
I have none.
I have none. Commissioner Schrader?
I have none.
Thank you.
Thank you. If anyone wishes to challenge the impartiality of any commissioner, please clearly indicate your intention to do so in any testimony you provide.
Go ahead. Martha.
Okay, thank you. I can't see things up close to my face. Good morning. So we are here to consider a proposed comprehensive plan map amendment and zone change listed under the file numbers Z0313-23-CP and Z0314-23-ZAP. And specifically, the proposal is for a comprehensive plan map amendment from medium-density residential to light industrial and a corresponding zone change from medium-density residential to a light industrial zoning district. It is important to keep in mind that this proposal, if approved, would not authorize any specific development, and any future development or change of use on the property would be subject potentially to design review under the county's zoning code requirements and standards. So the properties are shown in this aerial photo here. There are actually two tax lots involved in this application. They are both on the west side of Southeast 135th, about a quarter mile south of the intersection with Highway 212, 224. Combined, they contain just under 4 acres and have about 520 feet of frontage on Southeast 135th. Which is a minor arterial. What'd I do? Okay. The sites themselves are pretty flat. There's no overlays, there's no protected areas, no streams or wetlands have been identified. Each of the two lots is developed with one single-family dwelling and then several accessory structures, shop buildings, that may or may not be used for storage, but they were all, as far as we can tell, permitted on the property. Of note, all of the surrounding properties to the west, north, and south are already zoned light industrial, and in fact, immediately west of these properties is what has been identified by Metro as regionally significant industrial land. And it's about 60 feet away from the subject sites is a 2.5 acre industrial building as part of a larger industrial complex. And so there already is a lot of industrial development in this area. Also of note, there are several lots immediately south of this property that don't appear to be developed with industrial uses yet, but they were subject to very similar applications, one in 2020 and one in 2002. They were zoned MR1 at the time and are light industrial. And so this zone change potentially would sort of fill in so the west side of Southeast 135th with light industrial zoning. To the east of the property are other parcels zoned MR1, including a large mobile home park, but that mobile home park does not actually take access off of Southeast 135th. It takes direct access off of Highway 212, 224. This is the zoning map. The purple areas are industrial, the lighter being light industrial and darker being general industrial. The yellow areas are MR1 zoning. You can see the two properties identified there. If they were changed to light industrial, it would almost complete the west side. That one little parcel at the bottom that's sort of at the curve that's still zoned MR1 is actually a storm drainage facility, and there's no development on it. I'm not really expecting any development in the near future, but that would be the only one left with the MR1 zoning on that side. So also of note, because these properties are inside the Metro urban growth boundary, it's subject to Metro's rules and regulations and standards. And in 1997, I believe, Metro went through a process called the Region 2040 Visioning Planning Effort. And as part of that plan, created the Metro Urban Growth Management Functional Plan, of which all lands inside the urban growth boundary are now subject to. And as part of that, they identified important employment lands in all of the cities and counties in Metro. And this particular area was identified on Metro's 2040 Title IV map as industrial. And so the dark blue there is the regionally significant industrial. The subject properties are sort of in that general area. And actually, the vision for this property in the future was industrial at the time. At the time, no specific zone changes were undertaken and were not required to be undertaken to comply with this map. But it is important to know, I think, that this area is envisioned to be industrial in the future. So regarding these particular applications, notice was sent to neighbors and potentially affected agencies and interested parties back in October. We have only received 2 substantive comments, one from Metro staff in support of this change, noting that it would align with that map that I was just showing you. And then also one from the Fair Housing Council, a short email just identifying a potential concern with the Goal 10 findings, and I'll discuss that more in just a minute. The local CPO is the Clackamas CPO, which is inactive. So per usual, there are a whole slew of policies and criteria and standards that need to be met for a comprehensive plan amendment and zone change. They are discussed in detail in the Planning Commission staff report that was included in your packet. I'm just going to hit the highlights here in the next few slides. Happy to answer questions about any of these, but I'm going to try to stick to the most big picture and relevant ones. The first one being statewide planning goal 10, which is housing. So under statewide planning goal 10, when the bless you. When the unincorporated areas, when a property in the unincorporated area is being considered for a change in zoning, Goal 10 and the administrative rules say that we need to demonstrate through findings that the mix and density standards will be met by the amendment, which is a way of saying that essentially that even when you make this amendment and change it away from a residential zone, which theoretically could mean the loss of some future housing, you need to demonstrate that sort of overall in the urban area, the mix and density standards will remain compliant with Goal 10. And we did receive a comment from Fair Housing Council that really just said that we need to identify the actual need number for housing units in the unincorporated area. And that's a lot easier said than done because our Goal 10 requirements are different than cities, and we do not have any recent adopted housing needs analyses that we can rely on in this case. And part of the reason is that we have made so many changes in the last couple of years. As you all are aware, we have made a lot of changes to increase the zone capacity or allowed density of housing inside the urban area. And I think between those changes and the fact that we have permitted middle housing units, more middle housing units in the last year and a half than could be built on this property, I think that more than balances out and is sufficient to demonstrate that the mix and density standards under Goal 10 are met. The county has made a lot of efforts to increase housing density through allowing middle housing, through increasing densities in commercial areas, and all things that we talked about with you all in the last several years. So there is a potential loss of 46 housing units on this property, but it is more than accommodated by this new middle housing. And quite frankly, nothing has been developed on this property since it has been zoned MR1. It is not the most appropriate location for housing. It's not near public transit. It's not near a lot of goods and services. It's not near schools. Housing's actually being developed in more appropriate locations. And so regarding the other statewide planning goals, we always have to look at Goal 9 when we're looking at potential employment lands. However, in this case, we're increasing employment lands if this change are made, which furthers the purpose of Goal 9, and there's no specific analysis under Goal 9 that's required to be taken. And then regarding Metro's Urban Growth Management Functional Plan, under Title I, which is housing, it specifically states that a county can reduce its zoned housing capacity to allow industrial use consistent with that employment map that I showed you. And again, this property is identified on Metro's employment and industrial areas map as an industrial area. And then so finally, when we get to our zoning and development ordinance, when we're looking specifically at a zone change, there's 4 main criteria that we look at. The first of which is that it has to comply with all of the applicable goals and policies of our comprehensive plan, which were reviewed both by the applicant and staff. Most of them are procedural. One of them relates to transportation, which I'll get to in just a minute. Really, the meat of the policies and the comprehensive plan that we have to look at are under Chapter 4, the land use chapter, where it talks about the specific criteria that you look at for different plan and zone designations. In this case, you can zone a property light industrial if it has excellent access to the regional transportation network, if it has access to at least a minor arterial, and if it's large enough for several industries to cooperatively design an industrial park. Fairly general and discretionary. I think that given the location of this property and its size, it's fairly easy to conclude that it does meet these criteria. And then it certainly furthers the policies in Chapter 8 related to protecting and providing for employment and industrial areas. The second of the main criteria relates to a demonstration that any needed public services are sufficient. This is done through statements of feasibility. This property does have public water, sewer, and storm drainage, and the agencies that provide those services did sign statements of feasibility. And then finally, a traffic study has to be done for any zone change. And it's really to identify and ensure that the transportation system is both adequate and safe if we were to make this change. The applicants did provide such a traffic study. It reached the conclusion that this proposed change would not have a significant effect on either the adequacy or safety of the transportation system, and that no mitigation was needed for that. So, staff finds that this proposal meets all the applicable criteria for the comp plan amendment and zone change to light industrial, and recommends approval of both of these files. We did go to the Planning Commission on November 27th of this year, and they considered these files as well. There was no public testimony aside from the applicant team. The Planning Commission did spend some time discussing the potential loss of housing, and there's always a concern with loss of housing, but I think ultimately understood that this really isn't the most appropriate location for housing, and there is other housing being developed in the county in other areas, and ultimately voted unanimously to recommend approval of both of these files. And that is it for me today.
Thank you, Martha Fritzie. Does any commissioner have any questions or comments at this time? Commissioner Scholl?
Yes, Ms. Fritzie, thank you for that information. To date, has any organization or individual expressed any desire for approaching the planning department or permitting department for a concept for a residential project on this site that might get close to 46 housing units?
No.
Okay. Well, based on your information, it appears to me that these sites are not conducive to, I wouldn't want to live there. You know, 135th's got a lot of heavy truck traffic. If you're a young family with children, there's really no place, park nearby. It's not really a neighborhood for raising a family. So it appears to me that your recommendation for this change is a good idea. We do need residential space, but we're building projects, and like you said, in areas that are more conducive to residential projects. And we also need commercial projects. So I support your recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Shull. Commissioner Schrader, you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, from my perspective, this is one of the more straightforward land use decisions that we can make. It makes sense. It meets all of the criteria. We need the light industrial land. It's in the right place. And I will be glad to make a motion or have Commissioner Shull make a motion and give a second. because-
Commissioner Schrader, we need to finish with the hearing first.
Oh, that's correct, because we want to see if there's any additional testimony out there. Thank you for that, Chair.
Yes,
I'm
and
eager-
I will call on you at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm eager to get the job done. Okay.
All right, thank you. I do also agree with my two commissioners in support of this, but now, seeing no further comment, I will now open the public testimony on this item, beginning with the applicant. Is the applicant in the room? Sir, please come forward. I believe we have your information on file, but if you want to make a card, that's fine. Please introduce yourself with your name and your area of residence.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Peter Finley Fry. I'm a land use planner, not an attorney, to be very clear at the beginning. So I'm actually a nationally certified planner, AICP, so I work for the public theoretically. I want to thank Martha for her work, and I want to thank Clackamas County for their work. It's been a long journey for me because I actually did the other two on 135th in the past. I'm not going to spend a long time here because I believe it's pretty clear. However, I do want to say for the record that we do support the Planning Commission's recommendation and ask for your support. This makes sense to us. It's an industrial area. This is clearly the pattern. If you look at it, on the east side of 135th is a wall. In fact, it's actually a separate lot to protect the residential uses to the east and the golf course. It makes total sense. To the west is an industrial area. 135th is the edge, the border. It's important to have districts for synergy and to eliminate incompatible uses. The synergy is in neighborhoods produce schools. They produce things that residential neighborhoods need, like stores, real stores, not just a convenience store. That's what the synergy of a neighborhood creates. An industrial area creates wide streets, industrial access to freeways. That's what an industrial area creates. These areas are important for planning and for develop public infrastructure into the future. So this just makes sense to us. I do want to dig a little bit deeply into the housing issue because I am concerned about the political situation in the state at this point. I have my PhD in regional science, which is statistical modeling. So I have kept current of it. And I'm going to speak directly that it is not possible to do what the advocates are asking for. It's simply not statistically possible to get to this level of discretion in analyzing a situation. There are just too many variables involved. It's not possible. And I don't want to have to prove that, but I can, because I have in other circumstances where I was asked to identify the displacement of water from one pillar into the water. In that case, I got help by federal agencies explaining to local agencies that statistically it just is not possible to accurately identify the impact of something this small. And the second part of that is there's an argument of a cumulative impact, a lot of little cuts, and they add up to a big cut. And the reason, and what happened before is that in cities, you go through a periodic review to deal with the 1,000 cut issue. So you have a change of condition, and the cities by mandate have to look at that. They're not asking counties to do that. And why? It's because counties are not cities, because state policy directly says that urbanization needs to occur inside urban areas. And the state policies also encourage urban areas to be incorporated as cities, because cities provide a higher level of service and a different type of service than counties. And when I say higher level, I'm not talking about higher level in that sense. I'm talking about a police versus sheriff. It's a different type of intervention, if you will. So I don't mean higher in importance. I mean it's a different definition. So basically, counties aren't even supposed to have housing in a theoretical sense, right? They can have forests and farms and cities. That's the perfect world for under our state law. And that all that is getting caught up in this political development fever, money, affordable housing. And I would assert in the record that we don't have a supply problem. We have a severe affordability problem. And that's a completely different problem than a supply problem. And it's unfortunate that we're focusing so much on the supply side and not on the feasibility and how you. And I will say this for the record, if I had $200 million and I gave that out to grants for homeowners to buy houses, that would go up $2 billion if you think of the leverage of that money. So I'm trying to explain a different approach, a financial leveraging approach versus a feed the market direct money approach. So all that being said, I don't want to belabor that too much. I'm sure you all see the housing needs analysis. I get them all. I've got them all on my computer because the LCD sends them to me. But that's all I really want to say about that. What I do want to focus on is livability. Because in our fever to create units, we often lose sight of neighborhoods and the need to build neighborhoods and the need to build livability. And to me, that's really the important point here, is this is a place that is not a livable place for people. This is a place for industrial activity. And as a planner, you look and see, what is the world really doing? I mean, we're trying to create policies to direct the world, but we also have to see what the world needs, because theoretically, we're serving people. And people don't want this site for residential. They've had almost 30 years to develop housing on it, and there's no interest. And if you look at it, there is an industrial interest on that site. It may not be totally consistent, but the people, the market is saying, this is an employment area. Why? You've already mentioned it. Industrial Street, Edge, Metro, all those reasons. I'm not going to go into them because I don't want to, you got other things to do today. So that was it's already industrial in use. The last thing I wanted to say, and I'm welcome questions, there's this little anomaly, that green little anomaly on the end of 135th. Well, that's actually part of an industrial property at 130111. So it's not a single lot, it's a lot, part of a developed lot that has an industrial building on it. And my understanding is that lot is for water treatment for that property. That's my understanding. Thank you for your time.
And thank you for coming forward, Mr. Peter Fry, and you're representing the landowners, correct?
Correct.
H&R
Which-
Properties and Susan Owens.
Correct, and the person that can speak directly to ownership is going to speak next, if that's
All right.
okay.
I appreciate the comprehensive work you've done on that. I don't believe, this board necessarily disagrees with your opinions on land use about the supply issue. I believe the high prices are a result from artificial land shortages, and you know what I mean by that, of urban
Yes.
growth boundaries and not allowing infill, middle housing, a certain goes to livability, and this board has discussed that a lot.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask, is there
Thank you.
anyone else in the room who would like to testify, the owner? Is this gentleman an owner? Yeah, you can fill out your cards ahead of time. Anybody who wants to testify, please fill out a card ahead of time, and/or you can drop it in the basket after you finish. Please sit down, sir. State your name and your area of residence.
Thank you. My name is Tyler Dean.
Excuse me?
I'm Tyler Dean. I am a commercial real estate broker, work on behalf of the ownership. I'm just here to shed a little light on the history of the site and the ownership. The parcel, there are two different parcels in play with two different ownerships. I represent Butch Bussey, who is H&R Properties, LLC. They own the site and identified the site as more of a logical development in the future to industrial uses, and explored that a little further through Martha and Peter and decided to go forward, and that's what brings us here today. The ownership to the south is a separate owner, Sue Owens and her husband. And at the time that we went in to apply for the zone change, we had reached out to Sue to ask if she would like to join in the process, as she would be one of the few parcels or the only parcel left behind in the process. So it made sense at the time to do it together rather than run the two separate processes. So both the properties are developed primarily into shop warehouse storage today, and it kind of made it impractical to change the development into multifamily housing when all the improvements on the site were already with lasting value on the industrial end of things. So that's the reason we're here today, and I think that is all I have to add. Martha and Peter have covered everything else.
Thank you for, thank you for your support on this.
Thank you.
Is there any other owner in the room who would like to testify? Tony, is there any owner online who would like to testify?
If you are the owner or applicant, if you would like to testify, please use the raise hand feature and I will call on you in the order received. Madam Chair, I do not have any hands raised.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the room from the Planning Commission who would like to testify? You have 3 minutes. Sir, come forward, state your name and what you do on the Planning Commission and your area of residence. Thank you very much.
Morning, Chair Smith, Commissioners. My name is Gerald Murphy, or Murph. I chair the Clackamas County Planning Commission. I live in Rhododendron. I'm here to deliver basically the findings of our Planning Commission hearing. It was opened and Martha had delivered exactly what she had delivered to you, which was very thorough, gave an excellent presentation. As you can see, we had quite a bit of homework to dig through, which we take quite serious, because we do represent the county. We represent our communities, and we're handpicked by our commissioners to do this. So we take this very serious. Question was asked right off the bat, why does the county have a surplus? Martha answered that question, that we don't really have a way to figure that out. It's expensive, takes a lot of time. In the future, state legislation may change that, we'll see. We rely on the Metro regional analysis to make these decisions. Metro is conducting an analysis now. State legislature is working on requiring a house analysis to be done at county level. We can't say there is a surplus. Commissioner Pack asked, do we have recent zone changes in this area? Yes, we did a recent zone change in 2020, 2022, I think, something in that area. I asked, does the governor's goal to build 36,000 units per year reflect on this area? And I know this isn't law yet, but I have to ask. This is something that HPAC is still putting together our rules, the Housing Production Analysis Council. We don't have those rules yet, and we'll probably see changes in a few years. I'm not sure how quick this will happen, but we have to ask. Mr. Murdoch asked about the traffic study. What is the purpose of that? Well, as Martha has pointed out, the traffic study has to look at crashes. The history of our crashes in this area, is this going to be something that creates a worse situation or lessens the situation? If it stays residential, will it be dangerous in that respect versus light industrial? We really don't know, but we can guess that this minor arterial meets the needs of what our state goals recommend. So yes, this is probably a safer move to keep our industrial sites in one area. And that is basically what we're going to conclude. Should I continue, or am I?
Go ahead. Can you please work toward the end of your testimony?
I will, okay. We listened to Mr. Fry's presentation and basically came to the same conclusion as he did, that this is an ideal site for what we're doing. It's cheaper for multiple landowners to come together and do this all in one application than it is to do individually. So it makes sense on that end also. And if you drove this road, you would clearly see there's a definite line between industrial and residential. This makes sense. And that was what we concluded, that if this can create more jobs by doing this, opening up this area for more, let's do it.
Well, thank you, Murph. Some of the issues you raise are issues that this board has talked about quite a lot. And no, we don't have the answers. No, we don't know where the governor thought she was going to put 36,000 housing units inside the urban growth boundary. And she and I have had discussions about that too. And that's why she introduced some legislation last session to work on that. It failed by one vote, as you're aware. And I believe there's going to be some new legislation in the short session. We'll see what happens with that. Thank you for your hard work on this, and we do appreciate the dedication of the Planning Commission.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Chair Smith, I really want to applaud planning, too. The prep that they do for us is incredible. And it really keeps us interested and makes us reach even further. So
Good, good. Well, thank you, Murph, for coming forward.
you bet. Thank you very much.
Is there any public official in the room or online who wishes to testify? Seeing none. Are there any representatives from any CPOs or agencies that wish to testify? In the room or online. Tony?
If you are a CPO or agency representative, please use the raise hand feature and I will call on you in the order received. Madam Chair, I do not have any hands raised.
Tony, is there anyone online today?
There are 3 people online today, Madam.
How many?
3 at the
3,
moment.
okay, good. Now, we will hear testimony from members of the public. I do not have cards for anyone in the room who wishes to testify. If there's any members of the public who wish to testify who are in the room, please come forward. I see no one. Are there any members of the public online who would like to testify?
If you would like to testify on this land use hearing, please use the raise hand feature and I will call on you in the order received. Madam Chair, I do not have any hands raised.
Thank you, Tony. I will now close the public testimony. Is there any other discussion from the Board of County Commissioners on this particular issue? Seeing none, Commissioner Schrader, I believe there's some language in your script. If you would like to make a motion, please.
Commissioner Schrader, you are muted.
There we go. I unmuted. Yeah, I just would like to make a quick comment. I am sorry I jumped the gun a little earlier. I do know the land use process, and thank you for reminding me about that, Chair.
Don't worry.
But just another statement I'd like to make. Not only do we have a lack of housing issues, we also have issues with light industrial and industrial land, so our businesses can be retained. So I honestly think it's a good decision. I was going to ask Commissioner Shull if he might make the motion. He probably has the more immediate access to the language that we need to talk about here in order to do it, so I can second if I might.
I move we approve Z0313-23-CP and Z0314-23-ZAP as recommended by staff and the county's planning commission.
I second that motion.
Thank you. Commissioner Scholl has moved we approve Z0313-23-CP and Z0314-23-ZAP as recommended by staff and the county's planning commission. And Commissioner Schrader has seconded that motion. Motion is on the table. Is there any further discussion?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner
I'd
Scholl.
just like to thank Mr. Gerald Murphy and the Clackamas County Planning Commission. I'd like to thank Martha Fritzie, our county attorney here this morning, for all your good work. And this has been a very, very thorough briefing, and I appreciate your work.
All right. Seeing no further discussion, Tony, would you please take the poll?
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Commissioner Schull,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 3-0. Thank you very much, commissioners. Now that the application has been approved, I will direct staff to draft an order reflecting this decision and include it on the agenda for this board's adoption at a future business meeting. Excuse me. Caleb, when do you expect this to be presented at a business meeting?
Probably sometime in January.
January. Thank you very much for that. Excuse me. Council, do you need anything further from the board?
No, Chair Smith.
Okay, I will close the public hearing. Seeing no further business, thank you all for coming very much.